Hi, it's Hayley from Low Carb Central, and today we're going to be using the LC Pie Crust mix. This is a fantastic mix for quiches, pastries, pies. In this case we're going to be making a family pie with it. So the biggest thing to remember with this is that all of your ingredients need to be cool or cold. So pastry flour in general, whether it's low carb or high carb pastry flour, is always worked with cold. Cold hands, cold butter, cold mixture. You never do anything to it to warm the dough up. So what we're going to do first of all is mix our mix. In with 70 grams of chopped up butter. So you want to chop the butter up so that it mixes in nice and quickly for you, and that butter needs to be cool butter. So you're doing it in the food processor. You can do it by hand, but it's a bit more difficult, only because you tend to warm it up, and personally I've found that the pastry then becomes a bit tough. So you just want to do a couple of short, quick pulses and you'll see what it looks like in a second. So you'll see as we're doing it that the butter's all breaking up. We want to get that to almost like a breadcrumb consistency. But you don't want to do too many pulses because you don't want to heat it up. Alright. So if you have a look at that there, you can see that there's no great big lumps of butter or anything in it. It's just a nice consistency. It's still nice and cool. So I'm going to pop that back into my bowl, and then it needs to go into the fridge for 10 minutes. You cover it up. This can be quite a lengthy process, only because you're constantly trying to keep the mixture cool. So you do this, you put it back in the fridge, you mix it in, and then you put it back in the fridge again, and you roll it out, you put it back in the fridge, and then obviously you cook it. But so we'll go through this process first. So now we'll pop this in for 10 minutes. Okay, so it's just over 10 minutes later, and our mixture's come out of the fridge. It looks exactly the same as it did when it went in. Okay, what we're going to do now is in a separate bowl, we're going to mix 2 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon of heavy cream. And again, this all needs to be chilled. We're going to mix 2 tablespoons and 1 teaspoon of iced water. And we're going to mix in 1/4 of a teaspoon of vanilla. And then that's all of our ingredients done. So now what we're going to do is drizzle the cream, water and vanilla mixture over this pie crust mixture. And then with a fork, we're going to gently mix it in. So it's not about mixing it vigorously, because again, we don't want to warm it up. So once you've got it part way there, I generally use my hands from there on in. And then once you've got it all mixed in, back into the fridge it goes. This time you wrap it up in a ball or shape it into a disc, and then pop it in the fridge in some plastic. So it's quite a wet mixture. At the moment you couldn't really see yourself rolling it out into dough, but it does dry out a bit once it's in the fridge. So get all of your bits from around the edge, you don't want to miss any. Wrap it up and into the fridge it goes. I've got some plastic here. Just put mine into a bit of a disc shape, and now it goes back into the fridge for another 45 minutes or longer. It's up to you how long you want to leave it there. This is actually the stage that you can freeze it at as well and use it at a later date. You just make sure that you get it right back to room temperature before you try and roll it out. Okay, so it's time for our pastry to come out of the fridge. Now what I do with this to make it a bit easier is I actually roll it between 2 pieces of Glad wrap. I just find it's easier than letting it sticking to anything. to use about 2/3 of this. So I'm just rolling this out to the right size. Have to keep adjusting your plastic as you go. It's a bit painful, but I do think it's better than getting it stuck. Because once it sticks together, it's really hard to get apart. So that's nearly the right size. Once you've got it the right size, peel back one of your layers. I just turn my pie pan upside down and then flip it over. And then just ease it in. Now, one thing you do have to remember to do with this, which I didn't the first time, is to make sure that you put some weights in it. So there are actually pastry weights, but I actually just use baking paper and rice. Otherwise you'll find that your pastry will rise and you won't fit in anywhere near enough of your filling that you want to put in. Okay, now cut it off around the edges. And you've got to put this back in the fridge again for another 30 minutes before you cook it. Okay, 30 minutes is up and you probably can't see it, but it's actually gone, you know, fairly stiff compared to what it was before when we were trying to put it on. It's one of the reasons, I think, why they tell you to keep it cold. I've not actually tried to make it yet without doing the fridge steps. I'll probably do that when the new shipment comes in, but this is actually the last of my pie crust flour at the moment, so when the new shipment comes in I'll have a bit of a go and we might be able to simplify this for everybody. So what I'm going to do now is line it with baking paper. And then pop some rice in there, some nasty high carb rice. I just use this for baking now. This is my been baked many times rice. So as I was saying before, you've got to make sure that you do this, otherwise you'll find that your pastry will rise and you won't be able to fit any of your topping in there. And that's whether it's a sweet pie or whether it's a savoury pie. This just keeps the weight on it, keeps it down. So just cut off a bit of excess there. Oops, cut my pastry. Now, must make sure that you put your baking paper in. If you don't, you'll find that your rice will get stuck to your pastry, and that's obviously not something that you want. With the rice, you can just use it again and again and again. This rice has been baked many times now, so you just keep using the same rice. You know, go and buy a 69-cent packet of rice from the store and use it over and over. Okay, so now we're going to pop that into an oven and we're going to pop that into 180 degrees. I'm going to pop it in there for about 15 minutes. We don't want to overbake it because I'm going to put it in again once I put the pie filling in. This pie filling that I'm making today is actually a family meat pie that I'm doing. So I've pre-prepared my mix already. And with my mix I've just put in, I mean you can do anything you want obviously in your pie crust. I've put in mince, steak, onion, some herbs and spices, some low carb sauces that I had. I used the Walden Farms barbecue sauce. I've used beef stock. I've used some thick and saucy thickener to thicken my mixture up a bit. Yeah, I've just put a few different bits and pieces in there, a bit of liquid smoke to give it some taste. You'll see that mix shortly. But for now, I'm going to pop this in the oven. We'll be back in 15 minutes to see how it turned out. So that is our pie crust out of the oven, ready to go. I'm going to fill it with the mix that I made earlier that I was saying is mince, steak, onion, herbs, spices, salt and pepper. It's got beef stock, some low carb thickener, Okay, fill it right up. And then I've rolled out my top while I was waiting for the other one to cook, so exactly the same as I did with the last one. Rolled it out between two pieces of plastic paper, the plastic sheeting. Now I'm going to pop that on top. So obviously this bit's not cooked yet, but it's on nice and thin, so we'll pop it back in the oven. And our family pie will be perfect.